Okay, MySQL is a programming language, part 4, examples. I'm sure that this is good to hear. This has all been a bit abstract so far, abstraction of various sorts, but it's all been a bit abstract, so I'm sure you're ready for some examples. Let's have some examples. Where do we start with an example? Well, with Hello World, right? Of course. We're going to have a slightly more sophisticated version of Hello World because we're going to pass someone's name in, so it's going to be hello whatever the name is. Hello Joe, we pass Joe in, we get hello Joe or whatever. We're going to start by showing that there are two ways to do this, a function and a procedure. And you'll notice I've put all the code in here, the stuff we just talked about in part 3 with the delimiters and all that. So here we go. Let's look at the function side. So we have to play our delimiter game, and then we say create function, right? Because that's the SQL command that's going to create the function out at the database server. And then what's the actual function? Well, the actual function is called hello, and it takes an input parameter called name, which is a character that can be 20 characters long. And it returns a character that's 50 long, and it's deterministic. That is to say, we don't have to worry about it behaving in random ways. I need to look up exactly what deterministic does. But in general, you want to put deterministic. So now that we have our function declared, hello, and we have the input parameters and we have the return value, now we have a begin-end block, right, starting with the word begin. And what do we do in begin? Well, we declare a local variable called myString, which is a character of 50, and then we set and we call concat. Concat is the same concat that you were calling directly from your SQL code before. You may remember we had to play a little game with concat to concatenate some columns with some literals to make it all pretty and everything. Well, that string library is available to your function. So I call concat, and I concat the word hello with the name that was passed in. I stick an exclamation mark on the end. Very exciting. And I set my local variable to that, and then I return that value, and then I've got the end of my begin end block. And then this is the end of my function. So I have my slash slash matches my delimiter. So at this point, the create function realizes that this is the end of the function that it's creating out there on the database server, and lets that create function fly. Now you'll notice between these delimiter slash slash and the end slash slash, I have all sorts of semicolons. If I tried doing this without playing my delimiter games, it would have like decided that my create function was at an end where I got my begin, I got my declare my string character 50. I got a semicolon there. If I hadn't played my delimiter game, that declare function would end my create function, and my hello would be incomplete and not work correctly. Okay, then I have my slash slash, so now the create function realizes it's done, and then I want to set the delimiter back to a semicolon. I can do about the same thing with a procedure, okay? Now procedures can't return values, but they can pass values out. In this case though, I'm just going to print the value. Okay, I'm just going to set a variable. I'm going to do my bad print. Okay, so once again, I play my delimiter game. I call create, but instead of creating a function, I'm going to create a procedure. It's called hello. It takes a variable called name that's 20 long, just like the function did. Functions always have return values. Procedures never have return values, okay? So I've got my begin end block, and I declare a local variable, and I do my concat. You'll notice this is all very similar, but I can't return a value from the procedure. Instead, I'm going to print it. I'm going to print it by doing a select. We saw an example of that earlier. I have my end block. I stop playing my delimiter game so that my create procedure can finish. My create procedure finishes, and then I go back, reset my delimiter back to a semicolon so that life goes back to normal. Here's a slightly different version, okay? Here, once again, I'm comparing function. I leave the function alone. The function's the same as the previous slide. But this time, instead of printing it, I'm going to return the value. Only unlike the function where it has a return value, I'm going to return the value through the parameter list. This is going to be odd for a Java person because Java can't do this. A lot of programming languages can, Java cannot. Okay, I play my delimiter game. I have a create procedure, hello. It takes a name that's 20 characters long. Now I've got this second parameter. You see, there's the comma there. I have this second parameter. It's called result and it's 50 long. But notice this keyword out. Out means that instead of passing a value in, we're going to pass a value back out. We have our begin block. Now you'll notice the thing we're going to pass out is called result. So I have my begin block and I call my set, but I don't have a local variable. I use result as my local variable. I set result to the value for my concatenation, right? That's the string I want to pass back. It's in result, which is my output variable. That means that when I exit the procedure, result will have this value in it still. I hit my end block, that'll exit the procedure. I'll have result, will have that value. I do my finish my delimiter game with the / so the create knows that we're done creating. And then I set my delimiter back to semicolon. Okay. How would I execute these if I was in, say, my PHP my admin? Well, to call a function, I would say select hello. The select will act like a print. It'll call the function hello. It'll pass John in. John will do its concatenation stuff and pass a value back out. That value it passes out will then be printed by the select. Here's the procedure. This is the initial call where it called its own select. I call, not select, I call hello, and calls the function named, in this case hello, pass the value John in, it'll call the select to do the print. Alternately, I could call it and have that result variable, and then I could print the result variable with the select. Okay, we mentioned triggers. Here's a trigger example. Once again, I've got to play delimiter games, right? And just like I had create function and create procedure, I've got create trigger. I'm creating a trigger called trans before set asking price. It's a long name, but basically I'm pointing out that I'm going to call this before the set asking price, okay? And it's working with a table called transaction. That's why I call it trans there. And when I create the trigger, I say what kind of a trigger is. Here it's a before insert. So this trigger will be called before an insert on a table called trans. Okay. So before insert on trans, the database will make sure that this code happens. The code it's going to make sure happens goes from this before from this. Actually, there's not a begin. Goes from the before to the end. The end ends this trigger, right? I've got a little loop here. It says for each row, because I might be inserting more than one row, right? I mean, how do you know? Okay, so this will get called when this trigger happens. It might have a whole set of stuff that's about to get inserted. So we're going to go through each row, and we're going to begin and end. And what we're going to do is there's a column called asking price in the transaction table. And new.asking price is the value of the asking price in the row getting passed in right before it gets put in the table. The very next thing that'll happen after this trigger finishes is it'll get put into the table. And we're going to set that asking price to $9.99. So this is a way of providing like a default value. So whether the user specifies it or the user knows that there's an asking price or whatever, it will set new asking price to $9.99. Okay, that's the end of the for loop. We play our delimiter game, put to // and then we call the delimiter again to set things back to semicolon. So this will create a trigger for us. Okay, so let's run through a little more elaborate example, and let's look at there are different ways to do this. So here's our example. We're going to calculate a shipping amount. So we've got a table called sales that we're going to create. And it has an amount, which is like the amount of a product that we're selling. And yes, I could have put some extra columns in here like the product name. And at any rate, for my purposes, I wanted to keep it small. So I've got an amount. and I've got a shipping price. And we have some rules, and we're going to say the shipping price is 10% of the amount. So if they buy something that costs $1,000, we're going to charge them $100 for shipping. That's great. We're going to make a ton of money. But if they buy something really cheap, maybe it's a little plastic whistle for 60 cents, we're going to lose money sending it to them. So we're going to have a minimum price. The minimum shipping is $2.50. No matter how low it is, no matter what we calculate as 10%, they're going to get charged at least $2.50. But if they order something really big, like it's more than $50, we'll give them free shipping. Now, you've seen rules like this, haven't you, at places like Amazon, all those places that ship over the internet. They have rules like this, that you get free shipping if it's over a certain amount. It's a percentage. But we're going to get the database to apply those. And so when we create things in this sales table, we want to create the correct shipping amount, the correct shipping charge based on the amount of the product. Okay, and these are our rules. 10% of the amount, minimum is $2.50, free shipping for orders over $50. Okay? Well, we could write a procedure that would do this for us, right? We play our games, we create procedure, we got our begin end block. What do? We declare a variable called ship. Ship is a shipment fee, it's a decimal, right? We set ship to the amount, right? We're passing an amount here, it's an int. So amount times 0.1. So that's our percentage, right? That's our 10%. 0.1 is 10%. So we get 10% of our amount set there, and now we check it. And if that's less than $2.50, if 10% is less than $2.50, then we set it to be $2.50. We say, no, if it's too low, we'll just make it $2.50. Next, we're going to check, and we're going to see, is the amount over $50? If the amount's over $50, they get free shipping. So we're going to set the ship variable to be 0. Now that we've done this, we're going to do our insert. Our procedure is going to insert into our sales table. I showed you that. We're going to insert the amount which was passed into us, and we're going to insert the shipping amount that we calculated. Okay? Now, we could put this up somewhere else in our code, but by putting in the procedure, we make it standard. Other programmers don't have to keep track of what are all the rules for shipping costs. They just know, hey, I call shipping costs, and it takes care of it. Okay? So that's how we do this with the procedure. What about doing it with the trigger, right? Because the procedure, the programmer has to know, gee, when you have shipping costs, you ought to call this procedure assign ship costs, and it'll take care of it for you. That's great, but what if they don't know about this procedure? They got all this stuff to keep track of. They don't remember. They start calculating it. The rules change. Then we got different code, different places that does different stuff. It's no good. So what might be better is we use a trigger. Okay, the trigger will happen when they try to update the road no matter what. So we create our trigger, and this is before an insert in the sales table. So whenever we insert into the sales table, we're going to have this trigger execute. And this trigger, we start with the for each row begin. Why? Because they might insert multiple rows at once. We want to get them all. So we declare our shipment amount, very similar to the procedure. Now, we set it, but we don't have anything specifically passed in. But what we do have is they're inserting this row, okay? Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten called. And this row has a column called amount. And so new.amount is the column amount right before it goes into the database. So that's the amount we want to work with for our shipping price. So we take new.now, we multiply it by 0.1, that's our 10%. We set shipping amount to that. We check the shipping amount against 250, just like the procedure. We check the new amount, that's the amount coming in for the column, is above 50. If it is, we set the shipping amount to 0. And now, what we're about to let this out. We're about to finish the trigger and let it roll through an update. But before we do, there's that other column. We've got this column amount, but we want to set this column called shipping. So we set new.shipping to be the amount that we calculated. Now we end our trigger. As soon as this trigger finishes, the insert will happen, and it will insert the amount that the user was trying to insert, plus it'll insert the shipping amount that we calculated in our trigger. Now we don't have to worry about other programmers knowing that they should call this, This will happen. If they provide a shipping amount, we'll ignore it. We'll override it. They don't have to know what the rules are. We got all the rules right here. If the company changes the rules, like maybe they decide, hey, we're having a sale, we're going to give you free shipping on cheaper stuff, we just change the trigger. We don't have to find all the places in code that insert it into the table. We just change it right here. So there are some gotchas with this stuff. Surprise. These are some things that I saw in Cronky, which when I tried them, they didn't work right. And I just thought I'd mention them to you in the hopes that this will save you some trouble. So he has an example where he's trying to set a variable. He's got a select. He's trying to set a variable to the count from the customer table where, and this is very interesting select statement. It runs without an error, but it doesn't assign a value into the variable. The variable has a 0 in it, no matter what you do. Instead, what you want to do is you want to say select count star into your variable. See that difference? From, and then you have the rest of your normal select. And that does what you expect. It runs the select, it does the count, it takes the count, and it puts it into the variable. Just thought I would save you some trouble. Okay, these are a few examples. There are lots more. I hope to get busy and do a little tape that shows this actually happening with something like PHP My Admin. But until then, you have something to work with.